Hello and welcome to another episode of Millennial Economics. The other day, I was just kind of taking inventory of the project here that I'm working on for Millennial Economics for the podcast and the YouTube videos. And, I was thinking about how long I've really been at this. I've been thinking about for a couple years prior to even starting this project about starting something around personal finance. For those of you that know me, you know that I need to be involved in some sort of creative activity almost at all times in my life. It's kind of what makes me tick. I like creating things, and I initially thought about starting kind of after my personal finance journey of getting out of debt and learning a lot about money and investing, to talk to other people about it. It's kind of what I spent my time with my friends and acquaintances and coworkers doing anyways. And so I thought, hey, why not publish some content about it? I first started with the podcast in September of, I think, 2020. And we are 87 episodes in on that, which is super cool. And then just this year, here at the beginning of 2022, I decided to launch the YouTube channel and really get invested in video and, just kind of taking inventory and looking back. I realized that as I've gotten older, I've really become more patient with projects like this. Early in my 20s and in my late teens, when I would start a project, it was very, very hard for me to stick with it. And you guys have probably felt the same. I have all these ideas, or maybe you have all these ideas, and you start it and you get really into the process of creating a website or, creating marketing material and writing out all the plans. I always carry a notebook I have for years and, building everything out. That's the exciting part. And then you start it, and then it takes a long time for anything to really gain traction, and then you dump it, and then you move on to the next thing. And I found myself doing that over and over and over again in my early years, in my late teens and in my 20s. And what I found really cool and was really satisfying to me is that I've stuck with this as long as I have. And for many of you, you might think a year and a half isn't that long. But for me, a year and a half sticking with one thing is an eternity. It's really, really cool to see. And so it really got me thinking about telling you all how I became more patient with things like that in my life. Patience is the key to a lot of success. And in 2 or 3 main areas we'll talk about here in this video. In business, more detailed, I guess, starting a business, in your career, and in your investing. So in business, when you're building a business, and I've been involved personally with some startups, worked for some small startups. I've started some small businesses and creative projects like Millennial Economics. It takes a long time for things to build and to gain traction. When you are posting your first YouTube video and you have no audience, you might get 2 views, and you're seeing these folks that you watch on YouTube getting millions of views, hundreds of thousands of views, or even hundreds of views. It almost seems insurmountable. When you're starting a business, there's a lot that goes into developing that business plan, developing your product or service, marketing it, gaining traction with actually getting customers, and then making money, and then refining that process because you screwed up something. There's a lot of time that goes into building things. However, the people that stick with it typically reap the reward. There are very few overnight success stories, and even the overnight success stories that you may think of in your brain right now about people that seem to just make it really fast, there was so much effort and time and refinement of processes that went into that story that we never hear about. And I think that we need to shed more light on that, because I know there's a lot of you that are wanting to build something to call your own. That road can be long, and learning patience really can unlock that key to your success. When we talk about a career, when you start a career or start working for a particular company, usually you're starting at the bottom. And it takes time. 10, 20, 30 years of working a career, maybe in a specific field, or maybe really honing your skills in a specific type of work that you're producing for a company, to really reap the rewards. You're not going into a job typically making $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 a year. Typically, you're making $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year, and you have to work your way up, and you have to stay diligent with that to reap those rewards of that higher salary, or that maybe a better title or a better job or working for a better company. You have to work your way up to that. So I think that having patience in your career is super important. And then investing. So, we talk about compound interest, right? Usually investments take some time to for you to reap the reward, right? If you're investing in index funds that are following the S&P 500, well, you're not necessarily going to see a great return in the first 6 months. It can happen, but usually you're not going to see that. Usually you're going to see your great returns year 10, 11, 20, 30, right? As these investments build, as compound interest takes effect and your money starts to double and then it triples, right? If you don't have a sense of patience with your investing, it is very easy to get discouraged in month 1, 2, and 3 when maybe your investments go down in value, right? So I've noticed that in my investing, having patience is a great benefit. And I want to take a quick break here before we move on, just to say if you like this video, I would greatly appreciate it if you liked it. It helps the YouTube algorithm to get this video out to more people. It will also put it on your playlist of liked videos if you'd like to reference it later on. I would also ask you to subscribe to the channel. We're trying to build this YouTube channel up, so that would be greatly beneficial. And then lastly, just a quick pitch for Acorns. If you're a beginning investor, if you're an intermediate or a seasoned investor looking for an easy platform to invest, whether it's just a reoccurring investment into a portfolio, whether it's rounding up every transaction to the nearest dollar and investing the spare change, or maybe you just want a Roth IRA and you want an easy way to do it. I've personally been using Acorns for 5+ years, still use it to this day, absolutely love them. If you use the link in the description, you get $5 added to your account absolutely for free, and I get a little kickback as well. All right, so the next topic I want to discuss is how having a lack of patience can lead to missed opportunity. So when we talk about investing, and we mentioned this earlier on in the video, if your goal is to be a long-term investor and you start investing, maybe you're brand new to it and you aren't seeing the results that you want in your first year or 2 or 3, right? It's very easy to think that this isn't the thing for you and that you move on to something else. Well, again, if you're wanting to be a long-term investor, the most successful investors have a long-term mindset, right? So they're not concerned with what happens in 6 months or a year. They're concerned with what happens in 10, 20, and 30 years. And based off of historical data, we have a decent idea of what those 10, 20, 30 years is going to look like. That is not guaranteed. We cannot predict the future. But again, just looking at the past, we can kind of see trends, right? So really great investors think 10, 20, 30 years ahead. And it takes a tremendous amount of patience to be able to think that long ahead, especially when you're younger, With creative projects, again, like we talked about, if you start a podcast or a YouTube channel and after a month and you put out, maybe 3 episodes, you're not seeing the traction that you want, it's really easy to get discouraged, and it's really easy not to have the patience to push through because usually those great rewards happen 10, 20, 30 years down the road. And maybe not even, I shouldn't say 10, 20, 30 years down the road. Maybe year 1, year 2, year 3, you're going to see those returns. I was reading an article, I can't remember where, but I was reading about how long it takes a YouTube channel to really gain traction and to build their viewership. And it's usually 12 to 18 months. It's 12 to 18 months of putting in work where you're not seeing great results to get to the point where you start seeing some results, right? And that's not even guaranteed. So that just goes to show you, are you willing to put in that amount of work, a year to a year and a half of work of not seeing a ton of traction to get to your end goal? The people that don't have patience will not see the other side of that hill. Learning patience is hard, right? Just to put it into perspective, 1 year when you're 20 years old is 5% of your life, right? So when we just talked about this building a YouTube channel, are you willing to put 5% of your life when you're 20 into building something? For younger folks, especially when you're talking about people in their teens and early 20s, that's really hard to do because 1 year is so much of your life. It's hard to have foresight past then. I have an 8-year-old. Having patience for him is super difficult, even to wait a week for something, because a week makes up so much of the life that he's lived. It can seem like an eternity, right? So when you're young, learning patience is hard. As you get older, it's a little bit easier because you've lived more life. When you have to dedicate a certain amount of time to something, it's a less percentage of your life that you've lived. So it's easier to have that perspective. And really, that's what I've been able to learn is now that I'm 30 years old, dedicating a year into something is a whole lot easier than when I was 19 years old and I was starting projects. For reference, 1 year when you're 40 is only 2.5% of your life, right? So it's a little bit easier to digest investing into something for a year when you're 40 than when you're 20 years old. And then lastly, just to wrap it up, I learned patience as I aged and saw the benefit of what being a patient person can provide, right? So as I started this project a year and a half ago, now I'm able to see the fruits of my labor, particularly on the podcast, that I put in a year and a half ago. When I was a teenager, I wouldn't have even made it to this point. I ditched these projects so early on. I was never able to see that. So now that I've been able to push through that and put this work in, I'm able to see the benefit of that work that I put in. And when you see the benefit, it's very easy to continue to push through because now you know that what you're doing is actually working and paying off. With my investments, I pushed through that initial 6 months where it seemed like nothing was happening. I was just throwing some money into an account. But now that I've been investing for 4, 5, 6 years, I'm able to see compound interest work. I'm able to see those investments grow. And now it gives me the motivation moving forward to be able to continue and be more aggressive with my investing. So if you find that you are someone that lacks patience, I would encourage you to pick something and stick with it, even if you feel like nothing is happening or you feel demotivated. There is so much benefit that comes from seeing the work that you put in over the course of a year that will push you to do it for another 2, 3, 4, 5 years. So if you are someone like myself that used to struggle with being patient with things, go for it. Put that time in. Be able and stick with it long enough to be able to see the benefit and the fruit of your labor. And I think you will have an easier time moving forward in your life sticking with something. So I hope this episode was beneficial for you. It's certainly a lesson that I have learned recently and that I continue to learn. And we will talk very soon.